If we want to program our brain for joy, we first need to remove the junk. We need to remove the constant bombardment of notifications.
Known worldwide as the party scientist, his research reveals something profound yet simple. Meaningful human connection is the greatest source of happiness, and he's made it his life's work to help us find more of those moments.
Finding flaws in other people and complaining, that's the default. That's the brain we're given with.
If you're feeling weighed down by the constant stream of negativity in our world right now, you're definitely not alone.
Joy in the bloodstream can lead us to be more creative, more empathetic, more psychologically safe, and it can also raise our IQ.
Stay with us to discover how to bring more light into your organization, even in the darkest times. We're diving deep into something we all need but rarely talk about in professional settings: joy.
People are thinking, wow, joy. Joy is the simple answer. And, the first thing that was just coming to mind is just how often it's interpreted wrongly, this concept of joy. And we mix it up with toxic positivity, we mix it up with spirituality. It's like, it is really simple. Like, when our bodies are flowing with joyful neurotransmitters, we operate more efficiently, we are healthier, we are more socially aware and empathetic. And so there's a real tangibility to this term. It's not a hippie thing, right?
Yeah.
It's neuroscience, right?
I love that. I love that. And that actually is a great segue into allowing me to ask you a little bit about your background, because you're not just pulling this information and throwing out words like neurotransmitters and things like that and just saying, oh, I read this in an article once. I mean, you have a background that actually supports what you're talking about. So can you give me a little bit and give our audience a little bit of information about you? Like, how did you become the party scientist? Okay.
Yeah. The short answer is leading hundreds of flash mobs across Europe, Central America, and the United States. And that's where I developed this ability to bring people together with joy. And I witnessed the incredible positive impact and the rarity of joy, of shared joy in a lot of these places, right? But way before that, I was pursuing public health. I actually convinced some of the graduate studies administrators to let me into their courses early during my degree in pharmaceutical development. I would say pharmaceutical development is the opposite of my joy philosophy now. Like, how to access more joy with less, right? That I think is one of the largest goals of any personal work. But how I approached it in the beginning was public health, joy to prevent disease. That's still a large part of my mission. My dad was a public health officer. My mom was in healthcare. I was an emergency medic at music festivals. And so disease prevention was a massive part of dialogue when I was growing up, when I was going through university. And no one has taken this approach and this stance that joy is a health practice. Joy is something like going to the gym, like meditating. And we don't really regard it this way because joy is often regarded as fake. You need a reason to be joyful, right? But really, it's a strategic brain advantage when we are feeling joy.
What's the return on joy? What's the talk to me about the strategic advantage of joy, because I'm worried over here about my bottom line and tariffs and all of these other things that are going on. Why do I need to think about incorporating joy? How does that help me? Yeah.
Well, yeah, there's two answers to that question, right? There's the impact of joy on our immediate physiology and immediate abilities, right? You know, research by Sean Achor, Daniel Kahneman, some of these famous researchers show that when we have these positive emotions flowing through our body, we are better able to connect with one
Mm-hmm.
another. We expand our creative potential. Not just that, joy is also a way to this concept of physiological, psychological safety. And
Mm-hmm.
we've, you know, leaders have heard about this term introduced by Amy Edmondson about psychological safety. But what we don't often hear is that is actually a physiological state, right? You don't just think your way into psychological safety, you feel it. And
Mm-hmm.
joy can help us feel psychological safety. So, to summarize, joy in the bloodstream can lead us to be more creative, more empathetic, more psychologically safe, and it can also raise our IQ. So, it turns out that
Wow.
if you separate two groups of students who are taking an exam, and you get one of the groups of students to do something before the exam to elevate their positive emotions, to elevate their joy, they will perform higher than the other group. So joy makes the brain operate more effectively, and it only takes like 3 minutes to activate some joy, right? There's multiple practices from Martin Seligman and various other positive psychologists that help us elevate these neurotransmitters. Um, so I just summarized the immediate impact of
Mm-hmm.
joy, but then we have the longer term impact of joy, and I think the paramount picture there is cultural change. So creating a culture through baby steps, where joy and emotional expression is acceptable, and where enjoyment and lightheartedness is
Mm-hmm.
acceptable in our workplace, right? We all want to just laugh at ourselves more. We want to laugh at our imperfections. We want to be able to make a joke about a
Yeah.
mistake. And that is lightness, right? We don't want to feel heavy. We don't want to be weighed down by
Wow.
responsibility. We want to be able to make humor out of it. And that's what we experience when we're with our best friends.
There's all of this heavy, heavy stuff, opposite of lightness, I'm saying, you know? And so, when things are challenging like that, it seems like it's a little bit, well, obviously more difficult to get in that joyful place. So, I don't know, what do you suggest to people to get there and start figuring out? Because I want to raise my IQ points. I want to be smart in my
Yeah.
meetings. I want to create a culture that has that joy so that we can all be learning. But I got to admit, right now, it's really tough.
Yeah. And I feel the same. And I have people who I care about who have, they have been influenced by the negative news cycle, and they are becoming more and more pessimistic.
Yeah.
And the information they're consuming, and sometimes it's necessary to consume news and to be an informed citizen, okay?
Mhm.
But think about what happened when it was 2000. We
Mhm.
read slow information. People consumed a newspaper once per day. Now we
Mhm.
have notifications, we have the stock market, we
Yeah.
have the social media. It's all amplified. And so we're consuming all this junk information,
Yes.
and it's destroying our brain. And it's not just the content that's destroying our brain, it's the medium
Mhm.
that it's being delivered in, right? We're
Yes.
being constantly distracted. So just to tie this up with a bow, if we want to program our brain for joy, we first need to remove the junk. We need to
Mm.
remove the constant bombardment of notifications. We need to become an intentional information consumer. And
Mhm.
if people want to watch the news, then set a time for that and
Yeah.
use an app and be very intentional about it. Optimism is not the default neural circuit. Pessimism is the default neural circuit. The negativity bias is the default neural circuit. Finding flaws in other people and complaining about other people's stupid actions, that's the default. That's the brain we're given with.
Oh
So,
man.
like, we need to take even more control of choosing what inputs we have and how we choose our perspective. Um, and it's not easy, and it begins with that. It begins with acknowledging that we're not going to be the best at this, and it's going to be really hard to become intentional in this world that is programming us to be pessimistic and addicted to information, right?
Hmm. I have to say I am guilty of maybe having that, falling into that trap
Yeah.
of going in that default where it's so easy to see the things that are wrong. Although I always, I do try to, whenever I'm talking about something, start with the thing that's good, start with the thing that's positive as a habit. You talk about joy in such an interesting way. And there's a quote that I came across, this idea that joy multiplied by connection is the greatest natural antidepressant. Can you talk a little bit more about that statement and a little bit more about, what got you on this path to really pushing this mission? Because I mean, we talked a little bit about, you have this focus on health and healthcare in your background, but here you are, the party scientist, and you do seem hell bent on making sure that we connect with joy.
I've had so many people come up to me and tell me about their challenges
Hmm.
physically, mentally, socially, and thank me for creating a welcoming, energizing environment for them.
Yeah.
And all the way back to 2017, I remember we were hosting a Halloween party. We used to just go into the street, and I had a big team, and we would spread joy. We would get the music on. We would lead limbo. It was Halloween, and we were all doing the Thriller dance in the street. And this really awkward man who most people would assume was like not someone safe to be around. Like people
Yeah.
would have judged this man's appearance. And he joined in and started dancing with us, and he introduced himself afterward, and he became one of my greatest fans, and he eventually led a bunch of line dances at our flash mobs. We got him on
Wow.
the mic, and he's like
Wow.
30 years older than me. And years later, he tells me that when he met us on Halloween, that was the darkest night of his life.
Oh my
He felt
gosh.
so isolated, and he was going to kill himself on that night
Oh
before
my gosh.
joining our dance party. And he said that the dancing and the positive environment, and I still know this man, and I such a joyful guy, such a joyful guy now. And he shared this with me, and this has happened like hundreds of times. Hundreds of times. I may receive heat for throwing parties in public. Hundreds of times people have compared my parties to more effective than their counseling, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, yeah, not to take this in another direction, but church and like the village space, this is what
Yeah.
we used to do, like
You're
in
so right.
prehistoric tribes, right?
Yes.
But
Yes.
now we don't have it.
Yeah. No, it's so true. I talk about this because even like square dancing, my mom,
Yeah.
she passed away last year, but I remember, years ago, I would go through, sometimes we like clean the garage or whatever, and there would be like, we'd be going through old things. And I remember coming across this dress that had this big poofy skirt and all of this stuff is coming out. And I'm like, what is this? And she said, well, I used to be on a square dancing team. And I'm like, square dancing team? And she said, well, yeah, that's what everybody used to do. We used to get together on a Thursday night, a Friday night, and we would square dance. And it was like, that used to be what the community did. You know, I come from this small town in Southwest Missouri, right? And that's what they would do though. That was just a part of it. They would go to church, they would go to square dance. They did all these things socially together. There was movement, there was connection, and all of these touch points, all of these social interactions that we have are pretty much disappearing or have completely disappeared from the world around us, so that so many of us are like in this closed space where, you know, we're doing this stuff like across, even right now, you know, we're talking through, and technology is great. However, what's happening to our chance to connect together and to move and to do these things that help us, to remind us that we are these humans, that we, you know, can build these relationships and grow and really be there for each other.
Creating a positive environment where people can express joy, can hug, can celebrate each other. That is a nourishing environment. And the number one recommendation from positive psychology is to socialize, is to have these like breaks of social activity. In Scandinavia, they're integrated into workplace culture. There's these coffee breaks. In
Wow.
Finland, there's like the fika. There's these social rituals, okay? And in America, in contrast, if you look into Robert Putnam's work, he just finished a documentary called Join or Die. And he
Ooh.
documents the decline of community. And so community can be created rapidly, and I'll get into that in a second, but community is the limitless source of joy. And you don't have to know people for years to create that joy. You can sit down beside someone on a plane and create joy. You can wave to someone on the street and create joy. And there's lots of research that backs this up. These small micro interactions may be just as important as our intimate relationships, right?
Mhm.
But yeah, you showed these images, that was in front of a bunch of certified meeting planners. They love gathering. I love gathering because we're talking about joy here.
Yeah.
Gathering is so hardwired into our biology. Human connection is this path. One of the simplest, easiest paths to joy is human connection. And we don't need to complicate it. We don't need to get super deep. You can just have a positive, lighthearted, humorous conversation with someone, and it can elevate your mood for the rest of the day. So I want to communicate that. And then the other piece that you were telling that I want to come back to, so many thoughts. Why do we socialize less? Well, we socialize less because of
Yeah.
this. We
Yeah.
socialize
Yeah.
less, and humans don't realize this, but there is a massive opportunity cost to watching 2 hours of TV and 1
Mhm.
hour of social media. And
Mhm.
and the screen time is increasing, and we're communicating through text message
Yeah.
instead of in-person interactions. And so I want to emphasize this. We must get rid of the screens if we want to ignite energizing, joyful human connections. Whenever you're planning a meeting, you must vanish the screens from the room, because it turns out if I put my phone down on the table, it
Mhm.
still is occupying part of my brain. It's still distracting me. This is well known. This is
Yeah.
from the Huberman Lab podcast. So the point I'm making is the first step is getting
Clearly.
people to put down their phones. And this is what I do at my events is we do a ceremonial phone shut off. So I
Do
just
you
threw some
really? You
ideas
just
back
like
at you.
you
I
have
do.
them turned so oh my gosh. So I love this.
Positive peer pressure.
It is so good. How do you do it? How do you get them to do it? I feel like people would be like, no, no, I can't, or they'd hide it. Or do you get pushback? I mean, does this work?
Everyone agrees.
Yeah.
Everyone resonates that their phone causes them stress.
Yes.
Everyone knows that the phone interferes with their relationship building,
I
with
know it
their
does with
networking,
mine. Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
so sure, LinkedIn's a powerful tool and all, but no, it's very universal. And I just was in Phoenix leading an activation for like 1,000 medical recruiters, their association.
Wow.
And people, when people are engaged, they don't think of their phone. So it's only when you have a keynote or when you have a presentation or a PowerPoint, but once, because the phone, think about it, it's like a treasure trove of all your memories, all
Yeah.
your responsibilities,
Yeah.
your personal finances, money. So you got to create more engaging experiences if you're going to compete with the phone, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, you're speaking to me. Your stories are speaking to me. And this idea of, if you're going to have a meeting, you're going to have a connection, like, no, eliminate the screens as much as possible. Also be thinking about doing this for your own, for your own IQ and your own well-being while you're doing work. What are some other suggestions that you have for ways that we can bring the joy into our lives, making us better leaders and helping us to connect with our community?
Not easy to detach from the phone, even when, like, I was the last generation to grow up without a phone.
Yeah.
And we've had this experience of being totally carefree, and there's no carefreeness when you have your phone with you, because your phone is your gateway into all your responsibilities, right? And all your problems. And as
Mm.
my wonderful mentor, I wish I could call him a mentor, Eckhart Tolle, I've read multiple of his books. He says that you're not going to be happy, uh, like, if you're trying to remove all your problems. If that's your condition, you're never going to be happy, because life has problems, and this is life. Life is going to continue to have problems. So the goal is to become at peace with them. But listen, you know, there's two answers to this question. There's how do we bring joy to other people? And then there's how do we cultivate our own joy? And the number one tool for cultivating our own joy is cognitive reappraisal. We need to learn to take the reins on how we
Mhm.
make sense of the world. And we need to tell positive stories. We need to regulate our cognition. And so the question becomes, how can we create a practice of working out this muscle of cognitive reappraisal? And so my number one recommendation, personally and professionally, to everyone, journal about your life. And I don't mean just write about your emotions and whatnot. What I mean is critique yourself and
Mhm.
critique your mind, and every day make a practice of reinterpreting the previous day. So make a practice of telling stories about your life in positive ways. So when negative events happen and when we don't behave the way we want to behave,
Mm.
uh, we must tell an empowering story about that. We must forgive ourselves, and we must also identify how we want to do better the next day. And so all this is tapping into the skill development cycle, right? How does skill develop? It develops with feedback, right? We need feedback to develop skills. And so the goal here is, as a leader, as a human, to develop this awareness to give yourself feedback and to empower yourself to do better the next day. And
Wow.
so, you know, all it is going, my practice personally. In fact, I actually do it with this microphone. I talk to myself because I can talk faster than I can write.
Mhm.
I talk to myself while I'm on a walk, and I simply identify the amazing things I did today. And I also identify where I created suffering for myself. Or
Oh,
I identify how other people created suffering for themselves. And so I'm consistently identifying my aspirational mental patterns so that I encode it into my brain every single day. If I am identifying how I made myself sad or I missed some element of the situation to be grateful for, if I'm doing that every single day, I am reprogramming my perception to find the positive, to be grateful, and to understand and forgive others, right?
wow. I love that. I love that so much because I think sometimes that really is the key. It is if we want to become better in general, right? We need to have that feedback. We need to examine it and identify, what are the things that how can we do it better to forgive ourselves, to tell the empowering story, but also how can we start thinking better about other people when we are continuing to hurt ourselves, when we're beating ourselves up, we're always going to be harder on other people too. And so if we want to be kinder to others and to be more understanding, we need to strive to be more understanding of ourselves. I'm processing. It takes me a little bit here, but I'm going along with it. And I think that this is so important, especially at times like this when people are under stress and they feel. I constantly hear people right now talking about, I feel so hopeless. I feel like I should be doing more. And it could be
Yeah.
about anything. It could be about, the state of politics. It could be about the state of the economy. It could be about their own personal responsibilities that they have for the way that they're navigating their lives based on what's going on in society around them. And so I think that this is a really helpful practice for people to think about employing and taking on so that they can begin to, identify with those positive things in their lives, becoming going against what the default is in the brain and beginning to look for that optimism and those ways to have hope when it seems like things are so hopeless.
hmm hmm
Yeah.
And I just want to emphasize too that all the hopeless, negative events and people, that is also important to reflect on. So,
Mhm.
in this reflection process, we're not avoiding the factuality of reality. We are telling a different story about it, and we're focusing on our locality, right? And I think this is the
Yeah.
key insight here. People are too global in their cognition. We're thinking about all these global events, and it has nothing to do with our present moment. And so, what we must do is we must also start developing more of more of an awareness of our behavior in the moment as opposed to our powerlessness in the world, right?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I want you to bring a dance party to Winona, New Jersey right now. I want you to come. I want you to show up here. I could really use that dance party, I'm telling you. So this is wonderful. This is what's your favorite way to inspire joy amongst a team that you led or that you lead?
Yeah, I would say very simply music and movement.
Mm.
Music and movement. And the reason why this is just as powerful as sharing gratitude or sharing appreciation. I mean, I love to end meetings with appreciations. It's like an appreciation circle. I'm going to feature that in my association chat article.
Yes, yes.
But just normalizing appreciation and creating space and time for people to appreciate even the small things that other people are doing. But music and movement, listen, our body our body is designed to move, and our body
Mhm.
is designed to move in rhythm with other people. And so the endorphin system, which is the primary social bonding neurotransmitter system in the body, it turns out that when we move in synchrony, we activate endorphins. These are the same neurotransmitters that get activated when chimpanzees groom each other.
Mm,
So
mhm.
really simple. I'll just have people do some calisthenic movements to music, and immediately lightens the room. Fun. People enjoy it a lot, and I've done that, hundreds of times with 70-year-olds and 15-year-olds, the whole gamut.
Oh, I love it. I love that so much. And I think that, showing how easy it is, that was something you stressed earlier that I think was really important. Don't make it more complicated than it needs to be. It can be pretty simple, some of the things that you do to bring more joy into your life and to really incorporate some of these lessons that you're talking about. We don't have to make it more complicated. I am so thankful for you. I'm so thankful to have met you. I'm thankful for the work that you do. And I'm thankful that you have an article that's going to be in the next issue of Association Chat magazine coming out. So, super excited about that. Coming out very soon, some excellent pictures that are going to accompany that article. So, pick it up. And, before I let you go, what's the best way for people to reach you?
Everywhere, the party scientist.
The
There's a
party
few.
scientist.
There's a few that are becoming party scientists. That's my goal, is to inspire people to replace me.
I love it. I love it. Can you ever have too many, right? But
Yeah,
we recognize you and we thank you. Just thank you for all the work that you're doing. I really appreciate it.
such a pleasure, such a joy. Thanks, Kiki.